And Cornerstone Stone, I can't say that right. Every time I start, and Cornerstone Hoops is live. Maybe I need to come up with an easier name. Today I'm with Greg. I'm with Greg Burton. Greg Burton is a sports extraordinaire.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
it comes to the area and knowing quite a bit about the area, and you've got a lot of cool little stories. Some that involve me, maybe, where we work on the News and Tribune. That's supposed to be quiet and secret, though, so maybe we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, I think that one's undercovers there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think
nobody
anybody knows
watches.
other than
Nobody
the
watches this, so yeah, it's our secret. What? No, I just want to thank you. You know, when I put that out there on social media and you came up, you were one of the first people I thought I want to talk to because you do know so much. And, you know, I'm sure you're Silver Creek grad, right?
Yes, 1975.
1975. So,
With, along with the what Silver Creek, the mayor of Henryville, Jay Monk, we graduated the same year.
the mayor of Henryville. Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
I played against him, and
oh, did you really? So
yes.
who else was? So you were on the team at Silver Creek. Did you play any?
Well, I did not play my junior or senior year.
Okay.
I was just I don't know. Unfortunately for me, our junior year is the one that goes down in the record book, 1974, the fewest wins of any Silver Creek team ever.
Oh no!
So I guess I dodged a bullet on that one. I played baseball all 4 years. Baseball was my favorite sport, and it was one I was much better at. When I was a freshman, L.J. Taylor was the coach. I don't know if you remember him or not. He was only there 1 year after Ray Green left in 1971.
Okay.
And he was the varsity basketball coach, and then he was the baseball coach as well. But then for the last 3 years, Ken Trinkle was my coach.
Yeah. And for people who may not know, Ray Green was the coach and was the father of Steve Green, who was in Indiana, the only Indiana All-Star so far at Silver Creek High School. I think we might get a couple here the next couple of years, but
I was disappointed. 1997, we didn't have one.
I know, Matt Wren. That was
a killer.
Yeah, I really don't understand that. I don't, back then who all made it, I don't know. I'm sure you do.
I don't know.
Okay. No, but he definitely deserved the honor. But Greg is somebody that I've known for quite a while, coaching at Henryville, and you've done a lot of different jobs here and there. It seems like you're announcing or doing the scoreboard at about every school that I go to, but Rock Creek and Providence.
Just a couple, but I do a variety of things. At Rock Creek, I work up in the booth during football, but I don't announce. I keep the clock or the play clock, and then I do announce. The last few years, I've announced basketball, both girls and boys at Rock Creek. This year, I'm not doing the girls at all. But I've been Providence announcer for long. I think this is my 13th year as boys basketball.
Right.
That was a strange story how that came about. I tell people this all the time. I know one person at Providence to this day, other than Mickey Golembeski, because I've come to get to know him.
Right.
Same age as Ben Horning, if that name sounds familiar. He's Scott Horning's cousin.
Okay.
And
did he coach baseball for years?
Then he coached baseball for up until 1993. I actually went to his final game that he coached. They were playing at Jasper. I believe it was the regional, or it might have been the semi-state. I'm not sure. But also a young man was playing that day by the name of Scott Rowland, and that was his final baseball game as well.
He was a pretty good player there, Jasper.
He wasn't bad.
Yeah, went on to have a pretty good career. So there's a couple things that I'm going to ask everybody when I do this, but one of them is, what are some of your earliest memories with sports, basketball, baseball, anything and what kind of drove you into wanting to do that, to whatever it was, play whatever sport?
Well, I was thinking, I knew you were going to ask that. I think I'm 63. I'll be 64 in March. My first vague memory of any sporting event concerned my older brother. He's 7 years older than I am. And in 1962, I remember going to some basketball games at the old Silver Creek Junior High. He was in 7th grade. And I had vague memories about that, but I have specific memories of the next year, 1963, 64. I always, really kind of ironic, I always sat in the press box during the games. All right. I don't know why. It was just a fascination for a kid. I was 6 years old. All right. And so that's my earliest childhood memories. My Both my brothers are kind of natural athletes and everything they do. They're just very good. And my mom and dad spent hours and hours taking my younger brother and me uh, to my older brother's sporting events. Most of the time, it was either baseball or basketball. Back then, in high school, you had baseball, basketball, cross country, maybe tennis, and maybe golf. And that was it. And that was just all boys. But from that, you know, from 65 until 68, my brother was in high school. And my first basketball sectional I ever went to was in 1968. In that year, Silver Creek upset Madison to win the section.
And it was at Madison?
It was at Madison. It was the very first game Madison had ever lost in tournament play in their gym.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Wow.
And it was so exciting. I mean, that's really what I measure all sectionals against, from that point on. It was, because it was burned into my brain.
Well, the Madison sectional, I'm kind of the same way. When I was a kid, I remember going to the Madison sectional in the early 80s, and Henryville actually played pretty well and won some games. So to me, the Madison sectional was the sectional, like growing up. I can remember going to when I was coaching at New Washington, we actually played at Madison, and I shot some shots on the floor. To me, I was 27, 28 years old, but that was a pretty cool thing for me.
It was like Hoosiers. He had them measure the rim and everything. See, it's the same dimensions, except
right.
4,000 seats there.
Madison seems like one of the biggest gyms around. As a little kid, it's funny when you're a little kid, things are much bigger than as you get, as you get bigger. But what was the lure of sports?
Just being around it. I'm sure that's all it is. My family and I are very competitive. We always have been. Right. Like I said, my two brothers, they're just naturals in everything they did. I'm the middle kid. I was okay. I was good, but I was non-competitive with them in anything. And my brother George, lettered in basketball, baseball 4 years, track. He held the long jump record for a number of years up at Silver Creek as well. And he didn't golf then in high school, but he's a scratch golfer now. He's 70 years old. But then my younger brother Gary, who's 4 years younger than I am, baseball, basketball, golf, and track. I mean, he was a letter winner in all those in high school, multiple years, and so we were just always around sports, and just really took an affinity to it. My brother George, he played in the semi-pro league when he was in college, Metropolitan Amateur Baseball Association, which is still around, kind of in form. But there are some wonderful players there, and I was the bat boy. I warmed up their pitchers, except I wouldn't catch my brother George. He threw too hard. But and Wayne Stock was not only the sponsor, but he was the coach, and he was the first baseman as well on that team. And
oh wow,
they had probably the best hitter I've ever seen in my entire life was a guy by the name of Dennis Barry, who played for Clarksville High School. And they always played down at Memorial Park down in Jeffersonville. And you always hoped when he got up to bat, you hoped you had the third base dugout, because he was a left-hand batter and he could get around on anybody. And I don't know if you remember much about Memorial Park. I mean, he had some out to the football press box before.
Right. I know what you're talking about.
Oh, my gosh. Just some wicked shots.
And this was at Clarksville?
It was in Jeffersonville, Memorial Park.
He was at Memorial Park, but he played for Clarksville?
He played for Clarksville.
Okay.
He had some other guys on their team named Jeff Lentz. That probably name doesn't sound familiar. Mike Scarberry, Dennis Barry. They had a couple other really good John, or they called him Jay, Palco. And these guys played all on Stock's team, the MABA team, the semi-pro team as well. And they were just, it's hard not to love something if you grow up around something that's successful.
Correct.
which I'm sure your son's finding out.
Right. Yeah, I've had this conversation. He doesn't understand that winning a sectional is hard. He laughs when somebody wins a sectional and celebrates. I'm like, it's not that easy, son. I know you've seen a few of those, but
when my son Finn was a sophomore, 2000, Silver Creek won the sectional that year.
Right.
For first time in 18 years.
Yeah.
The Silver Creek had won a sectional.
And then one regional.
Yeah, and one regional as well.
Right.
You talk about an exciting time. That was a wonderful time. And I was still writing for the newspaper then. So I was a Silver Creek beat writer from 1988 to 2002. All right. So all those years, I went to nearly every Silver Creek game. And when my son Finn got in high school, I told the Evening News, I said, look, I don't want to be somewhere else when my son's playing. I said, if you need me to, I'll quit. And Bryce Mayer, who was a sports editor, said, no, you don't need to do that. I said, we'll just keep on sending you to the Silver Creek games. So that was a bonus. That was
you're talking about the golden era of News and Tribune. It was the Evening News then. Bryce Mayer, Greg Burton.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You guys were good writers. It's, that's one of the things that we've talked about is that, it's now the written news is, not as popular, but they still, Josh Cook and those guys do a good job. Mengelt did for a long time. Hutzel coming and supporting the local schools in Clark and Floyd County. Right. Then, the Courier Journal, great newspaper, but it's a Louisville newspaper, and this is not a smack on them, but they don't do as good a job over here. They try. They'll get somebody every once in a while that would try, but you know what? Most of their papers are being sold over there in Louisville, so I get it. Right. But no, News and Tribune, Evening News. Then, I mean, I've got probably a lot of your articles cut out in scrapbooks somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Remember when Henryville won the sectional? You were the assistant coach.
Yes,
and went up to Franklin to play. And I got to do the writing for that, and that was things like that. Just they stick with you. They're kind of like landmarks, of things in your life. And that was fun. That team was fun. It was fun to watch.
Yeah. The first one. The first sectional, did we go to Franklin that year? I can't remember if we went to Franklin or Edinburgh.
It was 2005.
Okay, that was the second team. Yeah. The year before. Yeah. Kyle Riggins has written in and says, you're as good of a fantasy baseball commissioner as you are a representative of Clark and Floyd County sports.
He's only saying that because I ran this league for a long time. Never won it. We actually had a pretty good, we had 21 players one year. And I divided it up into 3 separate divisions, and you only played against the teams in your division. All right. And so the standings were kept 7 teams in each division. And so people in one division could draft the same players that were drafted in another division. Otherwise, we wouldn't have enough major league players. But yeah, Kyle did really well. I did not. I just had fun doing it.
That's one thing I've never gotten into is fantasy sports. I know some people, I know a lot of people that really like it, and I probably would like it, but I've got enough things that I'm addicted to that I don't need to get into something like that.
Well, that's really the reason I got out of it, because I was just, my time had other demands on it, and whereas I still enjoyed it, I would have enjoyed it. Because I took care of all the statistics and all the standings and stuff like that. And,
that sounds like something that you would like. Statistics, the standings.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure.
Are you seeing the comments here? Can you see them? I don't know if you can see them while they're coming.
No, I cannot. I guess when I click on comments, I can see them.
Yeah, his son is also a Duke fan, so he's obviously doing a lot right, because Coach Riggins is a Duke fan. So.
Oh yes, yeah. Finn's a Duke fan.
Yeah, I get it. Go ahead.
Now, Finn, you know Finn,
right?
He's probably a Duke fan solely for the purpose of aggravating somebody,
right?
His mother-in-law, his grandmother, my mother-in-law, was a huge Bob Knight fan. Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was in high school, and he decided that he was going to become an Ohio State fan just to aggravate her. No other reason. So yeah, he teaches in Kentucky, or he's actually an assistant principal now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, at a grade school over in Bullitt County.
Okay. So he's not
Mhm.
far away then, just right across
No,
the river a
he's
little bit.
oh no, but we can get there in about 45 minutes if
What
depending
school is
on.
it?
I don't know.
I guess
I
you on the I
I've
put you
been
on the
there.
spot,
I
Dad.
I just don't know. He's actually been an assistant principal now at two elementary schools, one middle school, and one high school.
Is he
And
coaching any basketball anymore?
no, he hasn't done that for a while.
Gave that up?
Yeah, just too much. He's got two children now of his
Right.
own, and just too much demands on his time. He coached when he taught. His original teaching job was down in Horse Cave, Kentucky. Caverna
Mhm.
was the name of the school,
I
and
remember
he
that.
taught down there 7 or 8 years. And when he got married, he and his wife moved to Elizabethtown, E-Town, and now they live in Shepherdsville. So that's kind of a long drive, So he ended up having to give it up. He had this one really good player that ended up scoring, I think, about 4,000 points in his high school career,
Mhm.
and
Wow.
he played at Northern Kentucky, and I forget where he finished out, but he's finished playing now.
Mhm.
And Finn just really loved the daylights out of this guy and his
Wow.
family too. But,
Did you say, did I catch you right? Did you say 4,000?
yeah, yeah.
4,000 career points in
Of
high
course,
school. So he
you can start in eighth grade or
right,
seventh
right.
grade in Kentucky,
What
and
do you remember his name?
he had yeah. I'll remember it before I get out of here or when I'm at
That's fine,
bed
that's
tonight or
fine.
something like that.
Yeah.
I wish I had my phone with me. I'd text Finn and he could tell me. And as soon as I hear it, I'll know what it is. But he had like 2,000 points by the end of his sophomore season.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when you can play 5 years. What is the record? Does Richie Farmer still have the record? Do you know in
Oh,
Kentucky?
I don't know. I don't know.
Because I pay just enough to know to be ignorant of what everything over there. I pay
Mhm.
attention just enough to know what. So Finn is not coaching. That's it's funny because growing up, I remember you as an evening news writer, sports writer. And
Mhm.
then you started announcing. I think you were announcing it. How did the Rock Creek thing come about? Just because you teach there, correct?
I teach there. Yes. I had, well, I've actually had two adult lives. I was a teacher as a young man, and
Mm-hmm.
then my wife and I, we have 4 children, and I took a job doing something I'd done originally in the computer world, uh, system administrator, trainer, computer operator, programmer, system analyst. I went back and I did that for 14 years. And the place where I was working, which I absolutely loved, they closed. We were bought by another company and they already had a plant in Louisville. And so they shut ours down, which everybody knew that was going to happen.
Right.
And I would have loved to have retired from there. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. So I went back to teaching in 2005. And I teach at Rock Creek. I'd actually announced a few games before I returned to Rock Creek.
Uh-huh.
And I've been off and on there. They've had different announcers. They ask me, and then sometimes they don't ask me, and then, I just whatever they want.
Right. Right.
Be glad to do.
You're helping. Are you pretty consistent at Providence? Are you the guy?
Yes, actually, I am.
Okay.
Over the years, I started out. It was real funny. It was the 2009 season. I got an email one day from Mickey Golombeski,
The
and
athletic
he,
director there.
yeah, the athletic director at Providence, and it was not just to me; it was to like 3 other people. And at that time, Providence had a really wonderful announcer, but he was a high school kid, much better voice than what I have. I enjoyed listening to him,
Right.
but he graduated, so he went away. So Mickey said, "Hey guys, I'm needing of an announcer here. Uh, would you guys be willing to fill in for a game or two this season? Use it as a tryout to audition." And so after we swapped out, for the rest of the season. But after my first game there, I basically it was mine, if I wanted it for the future, and it really kind of frustrated me because they hosted a sectional that year, so I didn't get to announce the sectional. Some other guy did.
Oh,
But then Sean Payne, you remember Sean Payne? Sean.
yes, I do. Yes.
He was the softball coach at Providence, and he approached me, during one of the basketball games. He goes, "Hey, Greg, would you like to announce my softball games?" I said, "Well, sure, be glad to." So I only did that 2 years, but I got to do a sectional for that. In the meantime, Mickey had been asking. Providence hosted the sectional and the regional like every year, in baseball because of their field. And every year, Mickey would call me at sectional time or email me and said, "Hey, would you mind announcing for our sectional and regional?" Sure, be glad to. Love to. And then 5 years ago, the longtime football announcer retired from Providence. There 20 years, and Mickey was at a game. He said, "Greg, it's yours if you want it. You want to try it out?" And growing up, Silver Creek didn't have a football team. I knew football, and I was able to write it for sports. But I told him this. I said, "I'll try it one game." I said, and if I fall flat on my face, then you'll have to find somebody else because I really don't know what I'm doing, announcing football. And football is my favorite sport to announce now, believe it or not.
Really?
There is so much going on in the press box. It's unbelievable. And you've got about 5 or 6 people that are up there I have a spotter, and her name's Alyssa, and she takes the defense, I take the offense. And so she's watching to see who made the tackle and who made the plays, and I'm keeping an eye on what happened offensively. And then there's the 2 clock keepers, one for the game clock, one for the play clock, and then there's usually a couple other people up there as well. And we're just talking the whole time. We have walkie-talkie up there. Mickey's talking to us all the time. The concession stand is calling me all the time, saying, "Greg, hamburgers are on sale. All right, $1 for the rest of the game.
Push the food. Push it. We got to get this stuff out of here." No, exactly. I've always wondered how football announcers do that. So I'm going to guess that's how most schools do. They have a spotter.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I'm like, the tackles was number 24, and that's about 3 yards. I'm like, how did they see that?
No, there is no possible way I could do that.
Right.
I could call the offense, and that was it. And occasionally, I can see defensively what's going on. But she has a roster for the team on defense. I have a roster for the team on offense. I always call the offensive play first, and she's pointing to the people who made the tackles, and so I announce them afterwards.
Well, the secret is out. And here's the thing: it's probably not a big secret, but for a basketball guy, a baseball guy, the secret is out, because I had no idea how in the world they saw it. I figured there were binoculars up there, right? You're using binoculars?
I have binoculars that I let her use, but I don't use them myself. Okay. Fortunately, my eyesight is still really good, and their field is well lit, down there, and it's easy to see down there. I tell you what's amazing. You go to a place that has a great PA system like their football field does. It's amazing to listen to yourself. I got to call 2 games over at the University of Louisville softball field when I was doing the Providence games. And I just sat there. I was really kind of dumbfounded. I thought, man, this sounds good.
Right.
Is this the way I sound? I don't know. I can't sound like this all the time.
Well, that's what when I download these videos and I put them online, it's so bad because it starts off with the first, and I always mess up the intro. I got to get better at that. But then I can hear my voice, and I don't think it sounds too bad right here. But as soon as I hear it online, I don't like that. As much as you try to take the country out of it, it's still there.
When I ran my web broadcasting site for 5 years, the first game of every season, I would come home and I would listen to myself and I would critique myself. I did the same way with newspaper writing. I would write my story. I would see it the next day, and I would read the Courier-Journal story as well, because it was Pat Forty, right, and Rick Bozich and that crew. And I was just, in a good way, I compared myself to what they had to say, so that maybe I could learn some things. And sometimes I learned that it wasn't bad, what I'd say.
Right. Well, I know I can learn. I know I can learn some things, and it won't be good. I don't. I would rather read something I've written than listen to me speak.
Yeah. But I would go home and I'd listen to myself. And one of the first things, the first game of every season, one of the things I would always listen to is how many times I said the word
yeah.
And then after that first game, it was okay. I didn't do it anymore.
Well, people are telling me, they're like, yeah, you're always like, yeah, okay, right, yeah. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? They're talking and they need some feedback while we're going through this. I need to be able to I said, if you recorded me saying those things, you could probably, it'd be pretty funny. So you grew up in the area. You've been here your whole life. I'm sure you've traveled, but are there some memories, any athletic memory that stands out, like your top 3, top 4, top 5, Chuck Franz, or anything?
Well, Chuck Franz was the enemy. He graduated the same year as my brother Gary, and Clarksville beat Silver Creek those years. Clarksville had a good team. That was one of their best teams they've ever had.
Yeah, Chuck
Franz. They had 2
IU.
twins. They had Danny and Dave Thomas as well.
Okay.
And so they were guard heavy, which, you can get by with guards,
right. Especially against Jeffersonville's press at the time back then.
Yeah.
You needed that.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to think. I probably, this is probably gonna surprise you. I mean, I don't want to discount the Silver Creek 2000 team that won the regional. I don't want to discount that at all, because that's just special, because that was my son. But probably my favorite writing experience. Now, in 1995, I started writing in 1988, and in 1995, I begged them to let me write a weekly column, and they let me. So every Tuesday, I had my column, and I could write about literally anything that I wanted to. But it was the 1997 football season. I told you I was a Silver Creek beat writer for all those years, but I was usually not by my choice, but by their choice. I was usually the Providence football beat writer as well, and I went to nearly every one of their games. Well, Clarksville had a really good football team coming up, and I kind of sensed that. So I asked Bryce Mayer, the editor, Bryce, can I switch to Clarksville this year? And he let me. That's the year they went to the state championship game. Correct. And I wrote, during football season, I wrote weekly columns about the Clarksville football team. And I would call Dennis Hawkins, who was the coach. And great guy. I basically, oh man, wonderful. I basically said, what do you want me to write about this week? Give me a hint. And he didn't want to concentrate just on all the the skill players or the offensive line. He had me concentrate on the defense quite a bit. And so I did. And I had a number of, 6 or 7 or 8 columns that I wrote about them. And I got to go to every one of their games. Got to go to, the state championship game, which they lost pretty badly to Jimtown. But it was still exciting. After the season, they had their sports banquet, and they invited me, which shocked the daylights out of me. I mean, who am I, really? And I couldn't go because I had a basketball game that they scheduled it for a Friday night, of all things. And it was basketball season. And Silver Creek, I still remember, of course, I was going to Silver Creek. It was Silver Creek's 1,000th career game.
Okay.
As a school. So, of course, I went to that. But anyway, at this sports banquet, at this banquet for the football for Clarksville, they gave me a plaque. They presented me with a plaque, and I still have it in my office. It's in my room, and it's hanging on the wall. And so that was really kind of special, because I felt like I was contributing to young people's, happiness, joy, well-being, and to really the sole reason I have stayed around sports all my life. I just like being around young people.
Right.
I like, when I was a sports writer, I would always go to the JV games as well. I just watch. And that way, when I see those teams for the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, I can see players progress, from the JV level to the varsity level. And most of the time I could figure out who was going to be all right and who wasn't. But occasionally I'd get surprised, hoping someone would turn out well and they didn't, or thinking someone's going to turn out not very good and they did. But I just, again, I like any sporting event, but since the advent of class basketball, I like going to the small schools, because for most of those kids, when they reach their final game of their senior year, that's probably it as far as recognition. I mean, they can play in intramural league and stuff like that, industrial league or whatever, but they're just playing it because they love to, because they want to.
Right.
I think my biggest regret right now is that I quit writing I would have loved to have still been the Silver Creek writer 2 years ago and got to go to the state. And actually, I want to tell you something. Um, I'm reading the comments. All
Uh,
right. Actually, I've told you I've announced at Providence, I've announced at Rock Creek for a number of years. If I had a choice of where I would have liked to have announced, my games have been Silver Creek. But
uh-huh.
who's going to replace Dave Chanley? You know, and the opportunity obviously never came up, but that would have been my first choice.
Right.
If they
Dave
offered
Chamley,
today, I'd be tempted.
yeah, Dave Chamley definitely is not. He loves doing that. I tell you what, and
Oh, he's good. He's good at it too.
yeah, I announced for the volleyball during the regular season, and then we host the sectional, and I'm like, I really don't want to do it. I'm just Coach Dablow, our athletic director, just knows I'm going to be there because my daughter plays, and he's got an announced Zimmerman and Coach Zimmerman, the volleyball team, know they got a guy that will do it for 4 years. But when the section, I would rather just watch my daughter play than have to do that.
Now, see, I'm different from that. I can't go to a game if I'm not doing something.
Right.
I have to keep score or something.
I love to sit in the corner and be quiet. I've tried with my kids, and I'm about 95% successful, but I try to watch my kids, if I'm not coaching them, as if it is some other person's kid, some other team, and I'm watching it with about as much emotion as possible. Now, sometimes, I fail at that, and I fail bigly with it. But
been there. I know.
Yeah. I don't even, we could do a whole show on how parents react to a lot of different things when it comes to sports.
One of my, I've got two, you asked about, things or events that I've done,
right.
But I wrote 2 columns that stick out in my mind more than anything else. One was after Finn played his last game in 2002. I wrote a column. I sent it in to the Evening News, got up the next day. My wife said, well, what are you writing about this week? Which she always did. I said, take a handkerchief with you. You need to read it with Kleenex. And I heard from so many people. I heard from Brandon Hoffman's mother. It's when he was a senior in college. And she said, I just read it and I cried. She goes, I know it's not about Brandon, but I just put in Brandon's name there, and it means the world to me.
Right.
And so that one stands out. But I also wrote a column that most of the coaches contacted me about it. I wrote a column about coaching. And basically what I said was, parents don't know what goes on in practices. You've heard this before, so you know what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Coach, parents don't know what goes on in practice. Fans don't know what goes on in practice. Sports writers don't know what goes on in practice. I said, I do know this. I couldn't coach. That's not in my genes. I can write about it, and I can tell about what happened. And I can do a pretty good job at that. But my bottom line was the coaches know basically what best to do. And of course, we all have opinions. I've seen a lot of things in my career where I think, man, that's a bad choice. It's a bad decision. But if I was on the bench, I'm not sure I would have done anything different.
Well, that's just, that's one of the reasons I got out of being a head coach is I couldn't take the criticism. Social media was starting, and just the questioning of your character. And, I was trying to do the right thing for all the kids, and it really bothered me personally. But I've explained, and I think I've covered this before, that when you coach, first of all, you're the only teacher, other than probably the football coach, but the boys basketball coach is the only teacher in the building that is evaluated weekly by the community.
Weekly? I think you're being generous. I think it's daily.
Okay. Well,
hourly.
Okay. But no other teacher that, I'm the government teacher, the English teacher, the math teachers, they're not being evaluated by the community weekly. And so a lot of people get jealous that sports gets all this recognition and this ink in the paper, but there's not all of it's good that comes with it. But I've also often said too that it's like, let's say that you're an artist, and for 10 hours this week, you're painting a picture, and you put the picture on display, and somebody walks by, looks at it, and goes, "Yeah," and then walks on. You put so much time and effort into it, and you take it personal when someone attacks your painting.
I think by and large, and I think I said this in my column, and of course, this is not 100% true. It's not true 100%. I think by and large, most coaches really have the best interests of their kids
I
at
agree
heart,
with that.
more than anything else. And again, I've seen some bad coaches in my life, and but they usually don't last. They're not around very long.
Right. And bad can be not knowing what's going on to not treating them as players as human beings. I mean,
Right.
you can run the
Right.
gamut of that. But
Sure.
yeah. And I think that I will say this, I think that the people who critique coaches would probably not do as good a job as the coach that they are critiquing. I'm pretty
Yeah.
pro coach. I was on the Mike Davis bandwagon longer than anybody else, and the
Yeah.
Tom Crean bandwagon. But I just think that, and I had a couple of my biggest critics at Henryville. They'd come in, they'd want to say, or I'd hear that they had said something, so I would go directly to them the next year. Hey, I need a 7th grade coach. I need to see. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Oh, okay, thanks for getting all over me. What so you're bringing in your columns. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, would you say that when you were writing columns that those were your best memories? I mean, did you ever just mail one in?
I'm sure I did. I remember a couple of times. Yeah, I mean, sometimes all right, I teach English. All right. All
Yeah.
right. As my creative writing theory is this is what I tell the kids all the time. I said, pick up your pencil, look at the lead. There's magic in the end of that lead. All right. But you can only use the magic when you put the lead on the paper and you move it on the paper. You can't drive a parked car anywhere.
Right.
And sometimes you just have to start somewhere and not know where you're going. And most of the time, I say that I usually, no, I didn't usually, I always had an idea what I wanted to write about every week. I did my column. Sometimes it didn't turn out the way that I had planned, obviously.
Right.
Sometimes it's just difficult to put things in words, that's inside your mind, your heart. But there was a couple instances when I sent the column in, I thought, they're not going to fire me. They're still going to keep me, but this is really junk. It really is.
Right.
I was my own worst critic. And then I'd get the paper the next day and I'd read it through and I think,
That wasn't that bad.
This isn't half bad. I didn't give myself enough credit on that.
Well, that's how I am with my writing on my blog. There are a lot of times that I write something and I'm like, that was great. And I'll go back and read it later and be like, no, it wasn't.
I will say this, whenever I wrote not just my columns, but my stories as well, if I can word it like this, I always, 100% of the time, I always knew when I hit a home run.
Okay.
I never had any doubt, but this is a great one. I wrote, oh my gosh, I wrote one time, 1990, what year was it? 96. Silver Creek played Jeff in the championship game down at Jeffersonville. Joe Ledbetter got a technical call on him.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching.
And I wasn't there to cover the game. I was sitting in the stand. I was sitting with the Silver Creek crowd. And they called a ball out on Matt Wren. Matt was 6 inches from the ball when the ball went past him. He never touched it. And that's what Joe got the technical called on him. All right. And so, the game story, which I didn't get to write, the game story was about how Jeff pulled it out and how well they did and everything. So I had a column on Tuesday. And the name of my column was just The Call. Call was in quotes, The Call. And so it was a very long column. And I got some pretty vitriolic messages from the Jeff fans. And a couple guys called me at home. And and I said, they said, we've watched the replay of that. Now, after thinking about it for years, the official had the same angle as the video cam did.
Okay.
And I'm sure, perspective, different from the court.
Man, officiating is all about angles.
Yeah. After thinking about it for a while, I thought it probably did look like to the official. Matt had knocked it out. But the fact was he didn't, and it wasn't even close.
Right.
And so I wrote the whole column about that. And I made statements in there that were pretty bold. I said,
Right.
look, the opinion of most small schools around here, including Silver Creek is a small school then, was that, you know, it's stacked against anybody else to win the sectional anyway. Jeff's going to win it every year unless something, outstanding happens. And Jeff always gets every call, and I said, and this is a call they shouldn't have gotten. And I said, it changed the momentum of the game. And I stipulate, I said, I don't know how the end was going to be. I thought Jeff really did have the momentum at that time, and I thought they were going to win anyway. But Silver Creek had just played off the top of the chart. They played really well. Kyle Bailey was the starting guard on the team. He got called for a push off, as he was trying to drive around a guy 25 feet from the basket, and they called him a charge, and that really kind of got the bench going before the bad call. But Mike Broughton was the coach at Jeff, and he wasn't too pleasant to me for a couple of years after that. I went to the track section. I'll cover the track section. And he was working the long jump pit, and I just stood over there and just started taking notes. He goes, "You're going to accuse us of cheating again?"
Well,
oh my gosh.
Well, let's just see how the night goes. That's one thing that I wrote an article, a column for a week there for like a year after the tornado. And
oh yeah, I remember that.
And even the blog. And when you put that out there, it's not, I mean, it might be worse than coaching a varsity basketball team in some ways, because like everybody is reading it in the Clark Floyd County. Well, okay, I don't want to flatter myself with everybody. A lot of people are reading it, but I took it from such a point because I feel like there's so much negativity out there, even before 2020, that every article that I was writing, I was trying to touch on different schools, and I was trying to pull something out positive that people would appreciate from that community or whatever. But and I actually had some opinions on some things, but I stopped writing them when I started coaching because I did not want Brandon Hoffman. I'm his assistant. I didn't want people to assume that that's what he was thinking when I wrote something. So that was the main reason why I stopped. But I've messed around with a couple other papers, wrote some articles here and there, but I don't know. I enjoy it, but
for most of my writing career, at least the half of my writing career, other than the people at Silver Creek, I was pretty anonymous to most people. Funny story. Gene Sartini was the football coach at Providence, and man, he was a character. I just loved the daylights out of him. But from 1988 until 1995, he never called me by my name. Never referred to me as Greg. Never, hardly even acknowledged me. And one of the first columns I wrote was about Providence football, just being real complimentary to them and everything, because they had a good team from 93 to 97. They went to the state in 93 as well. And I got to go to that as well. So, but even though I covered them during that state run, he never really even acknowledged me. But after I wrote the column about him, and real complimentary, the very next game, well, Greg, what do you think we did tonight? How do you think we played tonight, Greg? And Dennis Hawkins was the same way at Clarksville. He was the exact same way.
Man, Dennis Hawkins, you talk about, I didn't get to know Coach Sartini, but Coach Hawkins, when Jason was at Silver Creek for that year, I got to know Dennis. And, I'm sure back in his younger days, he was competitive and people didn't like him or whatever, but that guy was one of the nicest human beings I was ever around. Treated me like an equal. I was a basketball coach at Henryville, and here he is coming in and just, what do you think of the team, the basketball team or the football team? And one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is to talk to those guys and ask them things and try to learn. Yeah, a little nugget here or there. And I enjoyed so much talking to him, and now he's passed away. But he did get recognized at Clarksville, and they did a lot of things while he was alive, which I think that's so important. If you're a school and you think that there's somebody from your school that needs to be recognized, do it now when they're alive. There's nothing wrong with doing it afterwards, because it's for the families. I get all that, but like Don Schrader at Jennings County. I've contacted them multiple times that guy needs to be recognized. He's dealt with cancer a couple different times. He's in his 80s now, and they need to recognize him now. His family needs to enjoy it with him. And I just don't get that. And I realize athletic directors are busy, have lots of other things going on. But I think that's one of the things that we've done with that News and Tribune thing that some people do, that committee that, there's some phantom committee out there. We want to recognize someone now for their legacy. And and there's nothing wrong. We've recognized some people that have passed away, or but I just think it's so important that you let people know, and it's not just when it comes to sports. You need to tell your parents you love them now. All these things, your kids, all that stuff, because you just never know.
I tell my kids in class on a regular basis that I love them. I care for them.
Oh yeah.
I teach middle school, and I guess I'm the only one brave enough to teach sixth graders, because no one else likes to teach the sixth, but I do. Because you see such a dramatic change in them from the beginning. They're still babies, when I get them.
Right.
And I tell them at the first day, I say, look, I know you're babies. That's okay. We'll get over it. All right. Just you'll have to quit acting like babies sometime this year, and you have to be responsible for yourself. I'm not gonna be your daddy, and we're not gonna call your mommy to come and bring you stuff.
Well, I tell my students all the time that I love them, but there's different types of love out there. There is the love like I have for my children, where if a car were driving through the parking lot, I would run, push them out of the way, and take the hit. I said, "Now I love you guys too, but I love you in a different way." If a car was driving through the parking lot really fast, I would yell, "Hey, look out!"
Right.
Type of love.
Exactly.
But I was. Go ahead.
Talking about Schrader at Jennings County. He was the coach at Jennings County when I played baseball at Silver Creek. Okay. And they beat us in a doubleheader all 4 years when I was on the varsity. But my high school baseball highlight was I was a sophomore, and we were playing a doubleheader at Silver Creek at home, and I pitched the first game. And this was before pitch limits, and the only limit you had was you could pitch 10 innings in a certain amount of time.
Right. 3 days.
I pitched 10 innings that day.
3 days, yeah. It was 10 innings in 3 days, I believe.
And then I couldn't pitch anymore. The score was tied 4-4 after 10 innings. And Trinkle brought in I'm not going to mention his name, but I still know his name. He brought in a relief pitcher, and the guy surrendered 9 runs without recording an out, and we lost 13-4.
And that was at Jennings County?
That was at home, as against Jennings County.
Okay.
Yeah. He was I was thinking of somebody else. The guy from Madison was the whistler, but not the guy from Jennings County. Always had amazing fan support for their baseball. They had still do have a radio station, and they would broadcast almost all their games. Talking about honoring somebody, recognizing somebody. I know we've done that again with our committee. Want to make sure we had Charlie Jenkins in there. Remember him a couple of years ago?
Oh yeah. WXPW.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that's a highlight of my career. And then I'll get to the other story. I was working a game. I was a newspaper writer. I was working a game out at IUS. They would cover 2 or 3 games a year. And Charlie Jenkins just happened to be out there that night. And he always broadcast 1 game a year. And it was a special, I don't remember what it was, but it was a special game. And so they had a table set up, for media. And I asked Charlie if I could sit beside him. He said, sure, if you pass me some stats, during the game, because I kept everything. And I said, I'll be glad to, Charlie. And he knew my brother, George. That's how he knew me. And so anyway, came halftime, and it was time for him to read the stats. And I gave it over to him. He said, just put on the headphones and listen to me for a while. All right. So I put the headphones on.
And he
started he said, well, we're here at halftime at IUS, and the score is such and such. Joining me now is Evening News sports writer Greg Burton with some statistics.
That's great. Charlie Jenkins, people don't know who he is. He was like the radio guy for this area. Yeah, he was, and he was the epitome of class, like a classy person. You talk about a cool thing. I was on the committee for the top 50 in 50 years, and Charlie Jenkins was on that committee. You know, I'm sitting around and I'm looking at these people and I'm
What
like,
am I doing here?
what am I doing here?
Yeah.
And
You want me to go get some coffee or sandwiches?
right. Well, I was told that because they wanted to make sure they had a person that was a small school person, because I was at Henryville at the time, and just to make sure that they didn't have the big school bias. And then, I mean, there's not much you could do. There was like NBA, Major League, NFL, Olympic athletes, and they don't come from Borden, Henryville, New Washington. I mean, they don't not, but it was heavily
a lot more volume at the big school. Yes.
Right. But that was getting to know him is pretty cool for sure. You know, it's funny. Go ahead.
After that, little, and he kept me on the air for the rest of the game. I guess I was color commentator the rest of the game. And from that point, over the next, I don't know, 8-10 years, he would occasionally call on me when he'd exhausted all of his other people that no one else could call the game. I was probably on radio with him a dozen, 15 times over the next, few years. I loved every minute of it. Oh my God. And I love being a color man.
Right, I do too. I've done a few games, and I enjoy watching. I love giving the coach expert, commentary. What do you think? And every game I've ever done, a basketball game, I'm saying the same thing, but it's really simple. This is what you do. If you're going to win, this is what you got to do. But no, I was looking through, I Googled you, and I was looking at your Facebook, trying to come up with some things, other than what I knew, but I didn't realize you were a blogger. And what is it? It's Burton's World, right?
Burton's World, yes. It's GregBurton.blog is how you can get to it.
And it's if you like to read, there's many different things on there. There's a lot of fiction, poems, short stories. So I read some of it, and it was pretty good.
One of those type of stories, I call it the covered bridge stories.
Right.
It's one of the sections that came from my older brother George and I back in the late 1990s. He's into photography, still is, but he invited me to go on trips with him to take pictures of all the remaining covered bridges in Indiana. There was 92 at the time, 96, something like that. There's not that many now. And so a lot of the ideas for those stories, I embellished them quite a bit, but a lot of the ideas from the stories I got from our travels. All right.
Okay.
And so those really had more of a personal touch, even though they were silly.
Well, you also had a story in there that you were writing for your students.
Yes.
And it was from.
I probably haven't updated that one. The story's long finished. I just haven't put it out there. It's a long story. I've done this a number of times in my class. Sometimes I get a class that I just really enjoy. And I tell them I'm really getting too old to do this now because it's hard work. It really is. I will write a story. I'll just concoct a story, and I will use them as the characters in the story.
They love that too.
Oh my gosh, do they ever? Especially if you're good at characterization. If you do little quirky things that they do, they really enjoy stuff like that. But that particular story I still use in class every year. And I change names. I don't rewrite the story. And it ended up being, I don't know, 300 and something pages long, typewritten pages.
There's some book material in there. Like there are things in there that, Greg, you do a very nice job writing. Here's what I will tell you this. I've always thought you were an educated person. When I talk to you, speak with you, I can tell that you are smart. Okay. When I was reading your stuff, I could hear you speaking. You write the same way that you speak. For stuff and it was very well written. And I was just like, I knew you were a good writer, but I didn't know this was out there. And I really enjoyed, I've got a couple points off of your blog, and I'm sure we'll get to it. But a couple things that I ask is I want to know about somebody's sports history. I've already had people telling me, hey, I watched this. I had no idea. I've seen this person forever, but I didn't know their background. And so that's one of the things I want to do. But I also want to get out there. Cornerstone Hoops, that's my nonprofit, cornerstonehoops.org. You can go there and check out everything that we're doing. But Cornerstones it's obviously a faith-based aspect for me, but there are cornerstones that are not faith-based, and everybody deals with hard times. We sit here and we've shared some stories, we've laughed, we've had a good time reminiscing about fun things, but everybody deals with hardships in life. What are a couple of things that you like when things aren't going well that you fall back on? What are some cornerstones for you?
Well, obviously, my family, and my wife and I, and our kids are extremely close. We always have been. We have one of the Alexa devices, a show. I don't know if you know what that is. It has a picture. You can, and all my kids have one. So we talk to their kids and our grandkids, every week minimum. And they all live 45 minutes to an hour and a half away. So we talk to them all the time. We have 6 grandkids, which I just love and adore. So when my kids, I've told people this before. My kids had a wonderful my 4 kids had a wonderful childhood. They got to go with me wherever I went.
Right.
Every Friday night, I would take a couple of the kids with me to ball games and stuff like that. And with us, family is really tops. For my wife and I. And everybody, like you said, everybody has tough times. Everybody has times when you think, what in the world is going on here? And we know we can always talk to our children. We can talk to each other. We can comfort each other, when necessary. We can, as a parent, I was not, see if I can word this right. I was never afraid that my children were going to get mad at me and never talk to me again. So I wouldn't hold anything back from them. I would just tell them the truth. I was honest with them. And I think as they've grown up, actually, 3 of my 4 children, the ones that live away, they have all come to my wife and me since they got out of college, and they said basically these words: "I didn't realize it till I went away how good a family we had,
Right.
and we want to thank you for the way you raised us."
Right.
And can't think of much better compliment to come from you.
And that's what I can remember a parent being at every athletic event. I didn't pay attention to that stuff. I didn't pay attention to who was there, who wasn't. Then you start coaching and you start to realize that not every kid has a parent at every athletic event.
Right.
So, yeah, I get that a lot. What else?
Well, I was, I met my wife in high school, and when it was 1973 for Christmas, she gave me a Bible. Okay. As a hint, I guess. Well, I come from a family of readers. Okay. I didn't know anything about the Bible. I just read it. I read it cover to cover. All right. All right. And I didn't make it out of the book of Exodus, which I'm sure second book of the Bible. I didn't make it out of the book of Exodus before I had decided that I was going to be a follower of Christ the rest of my life, Jesus Christ. And I remember I had a locker mate, and I started posting all kinds of Christian things in our locker my junior year. Trinkle opened my door. He laughed at me, and my locker mate did, and everything. But it stuck. It remained, to this day.
Right.
And there's times when times are tough. You just want to call out, "Dear Lord, don't have any idea what's going on here, none whatsoever. Nor do I have any clue how to get out of it. Please be merciful. Please be gracious."
We have a group of teachers that pray every Friday morning at Silver Creek. We get together, it's voluntary, and everybody keeps talking about 2020. I'm like, dude, every day is hard. This is just magnifying what you're putting your hope in. And if you're putting your hope in money, you're putting your hope in a job, if you're putting hope in a sport, if you're putting your hope in a president, you're really going to struggle. So 2019 was rough. 2020 is rough. 2021 is going to be rough at times. And I just think this time is not, any harder, it's just magnifying. And what do you put
It's
your heart
because it affects us. All right. I,
Correct.
I mean, I can't picture this being harder than the Great Depression of my parents.
Well, I can't picture it harder than living every day in the slums of Kibera in Nairobi, Kenya. You know,
Yes. Oh, yeah. Right.
every
Yeah.
day there is life
Right.
and death, but because we are inconvenienced, we
That's
don't.
the right word. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get to do things that we want to do at any given moment. Suddenly, it was the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And you can tell what people have put. That's what with this a presidential election, watching how upset and mad people got on both sides, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
my good, and followers of Christ on both sides,
Right.
and acting like this is the end of the world if my candidate doesn't win. I'm like, dude, neither one of these guys are in charge.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody else in charge. I did read, and you have some spiritual writings in there too.
Yeah.
And there was two things that you put. I wrote down. I actually took notes.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Took notes,
I'm
but there were
impressed.
two things that stood out, and the first one kind of goes with what you were saying about reading the Bible. It is so fun. It is. I love to read commentaries with it, so I kind of understand the time and place and all of that.
Right.
But I'll tell you what, when you find a new piece of truth in something that's in plain sight, I think that's what the words you use. It's just like,
yes,
does not everybody know this? Look at this right here. I can't believe I didn't know this. You never told me what's going on here. And people usually look at you like, yeah, Perry, we know, but I liked that you said that you find a new piece of, I think, truth or some new thing that's in plain sight.
It's like the V8 commercial. When you finally get the revelation, you're thinking, I'm 63 years old. How come I haven't seen that in the last 40 years?
And I don't, there's certain things people that are non-believers will not understand, but I read the Bible when I was a non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't anything special to me. When I gave my life to Christ and got the Holy Spirit, it's like, oh my gosh, who changed the words in this? It actually made more sense, and it was deeper, had a deeper meaning. But I liked that, and I liked I think it was Christians and Their Destiny. Do you remember that article?
Refresh my memory, and
the Christians are constantly searching for their destiny when they already have it.
Yeah.
And you compared Christians like that to the characters in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
yes. Because I teach The Wizard of Oz every year. I'm sure that's how that.
But it's true. The characters in The Wizard of Oz were looking and looking and looking for something that they already had with them already. Right. And I was like, man, that was good. I like that. That's something that I would write maybe. But anyway, no, there were two really good pieces out of that. But
glad that blessed you.
Yeah. Anybody gets a chance, wants to read some good stuff, get on his blog for sure. Good stuff.
Now you're going to make it where I'm going to have to start adding stuff to it again.
Well, blogs are kind of like those things that it's like anything new. You start off, you're on fire, and then you kind of get away from it. And I've been doing it for about 10 years, and I try to, if I don't see some, man, there was a couple weeks ago, I had a lot of stuff burning it up. I think I did 3 or 4 articles a day for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
But now you need to keep up with that. I think it's important. I think it's important because you're talking about your family. This is stuff that will be online forever for them to see and read. This was grandpa. This was dad. And now this will be on YouTube and they'll be able to watch you forever.
That's good. every game that I recorded when I did my website, I kept all the files. I'm giving those to my grandkids so they can
That's good.
At least hear my voice. They're all old enough to recognize me now, and they will.
But that's good stuff. That's I getting back to this year, I just don't feel like it's been any harder. Now,
no,
I've kept my job.
Yes.
So far, everybody's been healthy. I understand my perspective is much different than someone who's lost their job, has to do e-learning at home with their kids when they're trying to work. So I've tried to.
Those are the people I really feel sorry for.
Oh gosh. Yeah. And then you got like my wife who teaches 2nd grade, and I'm sure you know some people that,
my wife's a kindergarten teacher.
Yes. The parents work all day.
Yes.
So they can't do the work until they get
Right.
home that night. So
Right.
my wife is working till 11 or 12 every night.
Yeah.
So
I can't. I don't know how some of them do it. I
and
honestly don't.
single parent, yeah, you're right. And that's when I start saying, oh, people don't have the right perspective. Sometimes I need to step back and go, you know what? Maybe you don't have the right perspective either on what some of these people are going through.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Well,
Hmm.
you got anything you want to close with? You got anything you're selling or marketing or anything?
No, no, I don't think so. I told you, when you contacted me, you said 9 o'clock, but you can make it earlier. And
Yeah.
I told you if we'd actually been in person in school, I'd have had to make it earlier because I'm usually in bed by 9:30. My wife gets up before 5 o'clock, and once she gets out of bed, I wake up. I don't always get out of bed, but I'm awake. And it makes a long day. As I'm getting older, it's just harder,
Oh, I
and that's
understand.
that's one of the reasons why I don't write nearly as much as I used to. The last time I actually wrote a story for any of the kids, I think it was 3 years ago, and I was working most nights from like 9:30 to 11, working on the story. And I just can't do that anymore.
Well,
Just
I still have young kids, so 9 o'clock is usually when everything is done for the day,
yes,
finished, and I
yes.
can have some free time. But uh, I could have done it earlier today because my wife was doing some things. Brandon had some hitting lessons, but no, and I'm glad you came on. I'm glad you reached out and said, hey, I'd be interested, because I do think it's important. I'm going to interview some people, and people are going to know them and people are not going to know them, but you are an interesting person in our area. You are, like I said, you're a sports aficionado. You know a lot about a lot around here, and you've kind of had your hand in a lot of different things, and you know a lot about what's gone on here in the past. And you're an interesting dude.
Well, just to finish up here, you asked me what are the anchors in my life, and
Mhm.
really being around young people. That's the
Yeah.
third leg. My
Yeah.
faith, my family, and just being around young people. I I just get tremendous pleasure and satisfaction out of all three of those things.
I tell people that all the time. I don't know if I want to retire, because I love standing in front of a classroom of young people
Hmm. I do
and
too.
then telling them lies.
I tell my kids, I'm not planning on retiring soon. Like I said, I'll be 64 this year. And right now, and this could change tomorrow. Right now, I'm planning on teaching till I'm 70.
Hmm.
All right. I still enjoy getting in front of the class, like you said, and I learn something every year
Oh
from my
gosh.
kids.
From the kids.
From the kids.
Correct.
I had my sixth graders. We just finished reading Anne of Green Gables. They take a test tomorrow actually, and I had two students in one day came up with magnificent little jewels that I had never seen before. And I've read this book 10 times probably in
Hmm.
the last 5. I read it twice a year, every year, because I have two different classes that reads it. And I just stopped the class, when the first girl said, well, you remember this and this happened, and this. And I just looked at her and I stared at her and I said, that's truly amazing. I said, that I used the word profound. Then I had to, these are sixth graders. And then I had to explain what the word profound meant. And I said, her name was, oh my gosh, Morgan. I said, Morgan, that is a truly profound statement. Then I explained what profound meant. And of course she beamed and she got all embarrassed and everything. But we were talking about, one of my sixth graders asked me this year about Shakespeare. All right. And in particular, they asked about Hamlet. Now, I love Shakespeare. All right. So I explained briefly what the story of Hamlet was. And I gave the plot of it and everything. Had this one young fellow, again, he's a sixth grader, raised his hand. I said, yes, Elijah. He said, basically, that's the story of the Lion King. And it just stopped me in my track because he was right. He was true.
That's
and I,
great.
and I stopped the clock. I said, and this is why I continue to teach.
Hmm.
And I said, I'll tell you, just like I tell every other class I teach, when I quit learning something, then I'm finished. I won't teach anymore.
Well,
So
you know what? I think it's a good way to end it.
yeah,
The if you see Greg out, say hello to him. He'll talk to you. Ask him some questions from this podcast or Silver Creek or Providence or Rock Creek. He'll be glad to talk to you.
I answer questions about things from a long time ago better than current events. Sometimes I go to the store and I can't remember what I went for, but I could remember when I was in third grade. I was in Lions Club over at this Speed Community Building, well, just like it was yesterday.
I appreciate you coming on here and talking with me. Cornerstone.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, cornerstonehoops.org is where all this stuff is located. You can find it one place or another. And like I said, you're not going to find much better people than Greg Burton. And thanks again for joining.
Well, thank you, Perry. Appreciate it.